Chapter 339, Psychiatrist. Sharon took the sedative that was stored in a glass tube, looked at the liquid that looked pure, and lightly nodded. All right. As expected of someone who doesn't waste her breath. Klein smiled and said, Miss Sharon, can you tell me the candidate locations for the battleground that you've decided on? I wish to familiarize myself with the surroundings in the next few days. This way, no matter where you ultimately choose, my preparations would be more than sufficient. And since they have the right to choose the location of the final battle, they won't worry about the possibility of me informing the authorities or any other beyonder who might try to take advantage of the situation. Of course, if she really doesn't trust me, she could try another notarization. Klein thought quietly. Sharon stared at him for a few seconds with her blue eyes before saying, Prepare a map of Backland when you're back. Leave it on the coffee table. No problem. I hope that this cooperation will not only go smoothly, but also be enjoyable. Klein habitually leaned forward to shake hands. Sharon lowered her head to take a look, and her figure gradually faded into the air. Klein continued his motion and raised his right hand to smooth his black hair, laughing dryly in the process. He had asked for the location of the battleground ahead of time, not only to prepare for the mission, but also to be on guard against Sharon and Merrick. Although their philosophy was to suppress and restrain their desires, and it was unlikely they wouldn't kick someone to the curb when they'd outlived their usefulness. Klein couldn't be sure that Wraith Steve, Zombie Jason, and Werewolf Tyre didn't have what they had abnormally desired. If there really was a treasure that would cause any ordinary beyonder to have strong malicious intent, Klein really couldn't guarantee that the two mutants would be able to control themselves. Therefore, he had to figure out the environment in advance and prepare an escape route in the event that they wished to silence him. It wasn't that Klein didn't trust Sharon, who he had went through life and death with, but it was the most basic form of self-protection. One shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but one must be vigilant so as to not be harmed. Klein turned his head to look out the window and sighed inwardly as he mused a Chinese phrase. One gas lamp after another kept being left behind as the carriage went forward. The streets became more spacious and cleaner, and it took him more than half an hour to get back to Minsk Street. It's really expensive taking a carriage at this time. Klein looked up at the nearly black sky and the red moon that seemed to barely pierce through the clouds. He walked on for a while, and suddenly he saw that the house of Lawyer Jurgen was dark. Pulling out his gold pocket watch, he pressed it open and glanced at it. With a chuckle, Klein detoured to Jurgen's door and used the key that he had been given to open it. At that moment, Brody the black cat was already quietly sitting behind the door, staring at the visitor with his pair of dark, round green eyes. The room was dark and silent, bleak and lonely. Klein squatted down and tried to touch Brody's head, but Brody quickly moved back and flung his hand away in disgust. Shaking his head with laughter, he got up, opened the valve, and lit the gas lamp. Following Jurgen's descriptions, he went to the cupboard to find the food that had already been prepared. Then he went into the kitchen, lit the kettle to boil some water, and prepared Brody's favorite dish, boiled chicken breast. The black cat followed him in, and with an agile leap, it reached the counter. It sat beside him and watched him without making a fuss. Klein glanced at it, rehearsing the shredding of chicken breast in his mind while he chatted with Brody. You must miss Mrs. Doris, right? Are you worried about her condition? Lawyer Jurgen didn't come home today. Are you feeling lonely and uncomfortable on your own? Do you feel like you lack a sense of belonging and are exhausted? As he spoke, Klein's voice slowly faded into silence. Brody the black cat remained sitting there, quietly watching him. It didn't make any noise, nor did it cry out. Audrey was invited to tea at Lady Norma's house. These are the mysticism experts that I mentioned. Lady Norma introduced the distinguished guests warmly. This is Mr. Hilbert Alucard, a psychologist and a jewelry designer. He's very talented. This is Miss Escalante Osleka. She's a doctor for mental health, what we usually call a psychiatrist. Hilbert Alucard was a man in his 40s. He looked to be of southern continent descent, and his skin was brown. His brown hair, blue eyes, and facial features weren't particularly outstanding. He gave off a silent and reserved feeling. Escalante Osleka was a baby-faced lady who looked like a young girl studying at a public or grammar school, even though she was already a psychiatrist. She was 3 or 4 centimeters shorter than Audrey, and she had long raven black hair that reached her waist and a pair of lake blue eyes. Audrey exchanged a few pleasantries with him, then she sat down, keenly aware that Alucard and Escalante were observing her. She didn't use her telepathist abilities, and she pretended to know nothing. While initiating topics in the field of mysticism, she constantly paid attention to her emotions, ensuring that they were in the most logical state. I can't let them find out that I'm already a beyonder, and that I have already taken the spectator and telepathist potions. Audrey knew exactly what role she was to play today. Unlike the silent Alucard, Escalante was quite a conversationalist. After a few rounds of exchanges, she asked, "Do you know about major years and major months?" "No, I haven't heard of those," Audrey cautiously answered, using only the knowledge she had obtained from her interaction with mysticism enthusiasts. "In fact, I've already learned from Mr. Hanged Man what a major year and major month is." She added with a smile in her heart, "A major year refers to the number of years it takes for the planet to deviate from its axis, totaling 25,920 years. In the field of mysticism, this is considered a complete cycle that goes from the beginning to the end. A major month refers to the number of years it takes for this deviation to pass through one of the 12 constellations. Each major month represents 2,160 years. During the transition of major months, terrible disasters will occur. And according to calculations, we aren't too many years away from the end of the current major moon." Escalante spoke with confidence, keeping the atmosphere harmonious. Audrey hid the fact that she knew a lot, as she asked the wrong questions from time to time in a curious tone. With this, time passed quickly. At the end of tea time, Alucard and Escalante stood up at the same time to take their leave, leaving Lady Norma's house. This caused Audrey to be rather disappointed. She imagined that they would eventually hint at the matter regarding the psychology alchemists, but in the end, they didn't say anything. Yes, as a secret organization that cannot be exposed, the examination of candidates can't be that simple and direct. From the looks of it, they will need to interact with me a few times and observe me in secret before they decide whether or not they want to reveal information to me and recruit me into the organization. That's good too. I can report this to Mr. Fool. Audrey quickly understood the underlying reasons. She then took her leave, and Lady Norma walked her to the door, smiled, and said, "Audrey, I see that you're also interested in psychology. Why not consider being a psychiatrist before you get married? Earl Hall and his wife are followers of the goddess. They should be able to support you in doing such things. Among aristocrats, unless there was a financial crisis or other special situations, coming to an agreement on marriage required a long process. Only after careful consideration and comparisons would they be able to make a decision. This was because this wasn't only a matter between two youngsters, but it also involved the alliance and mutual assistance of the two families. Therefore, although aristocratic women were able to officially enter social events under the direction of the Queen after the age of 18, proclaiming their adulthood and consideration for marriage, they often started a family after the age of 26, according to statistics. Similarly, the average age of a male aristocrat's entry into politics for the first time was 28.5 years. In other words, Audrey would have about 8 years to do what she liked after she reached adulthood. The Church of Evernight had always encouraged female believers to go out to work and engage in certain occupations. In the aristocratic circles, many young ladies and women became literary critics, musicians, pianists, painters, etc. Is this a test? Audrey smiled faintly and replied, "I will need to read more books in that case." Actually, she had always felt that it wasn't too safe for the members of the psychology alchemists to become psychologists or psychiatrists because the upper echelons of the official organizations, such as the Nighthawks and the mandated Punishers, likely knew of the acting method. Therefore, they would definitely pay more attention to this group of people. Lady Norma seemed pleased with her answer and nodded with a smile. Escalante and Alucard are both good teachers. Well, maybe I could consider asking Miss Escalante to be my home tutor on psychology. Audrey nodded obediently. When Klein got up on the early Sunday morning, he found that the map of Backland on the coffee table in the living room had been circled in several places, and they weren't too far apart. Therefore, he spent the rest of the morning carefully familiarizing himself with the surroundings, figuring out exactly where the buildings were located and where the nearest cathedral was. In the afternoon, having time to spare again, he went to the Quelog Club to practice his shooting and beyonder powers. As soon as he entered the hall, he saw the surgeon, Aaron Series, hobbling out slowly from the buffet cafeteria with a crutch. After greeting him, he asked out of concern, "How have you been lately, Aaron? Has your luck improved?" Aaron, who was born with a blank face, smiled sincerely. "At least I'm not that unlucky anymore. I followed your suggestion, went to the cathedral, and told the bishop about the matter. He told me to go directly to the confessional to pray to the goddess. I actually fell asleep while praying, but I felt like the goddess had bestowed me with a peaceful state. After that, my luck has been normal." Praise the lady. He drew a crimson moon on his chest. "According to my experience, it was likely a particular sequence 7 nightmare who caused you to fall into a deep sleep. Then, a nighthawk who specializes in rituals quickly set up an altar, prayed to the goddess, and neutralized your misfortune." Klein smiled. "That's great." At that moment, Aaron looked at him and said, "Sherlock, I've always felt that you weren't very pious in your belief of the god of steam and machinery. Why don't you change your faith? Look at me, a perfect example. Put your faith in the goddess."